From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't already, go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify or wherever you listen to our podcast. It helps other people to find the podcast, but we appreciate all the love. Just tell people about it. Follow us everywhere. Business of Esports on just about every social. Honorable Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Having a great week, Paul. Looking forward to the episode today, and glad to see your face. I know you're not in your usual setup, and happy we're still able to keep the show running. You know, we run a tight ship over here.
So it's true. This is episode 170. I apologize. Although I have a pretty decent mic this week, my camera's not the same. That will be fixed by next week. I am in Florida. Because I don't like cold weather, but it has been an interesting week, Jimmy. I'm curious. Because I got a lot of hate for this. I just want to mention it right off the top. My view on Halo.
Yeah, you deserve that. So continue.
Did you get to actually try it this week?
I am looking forward to playing it after the live show tonight. So afterwards, I'm going to hop on and play the actual full release. But I've heard great things. I have about 4 different group threads from years ago. You know, guys that I used to raid with in Destiny 1, and these threads are coming up on my phone, which I didn't even know I was still in. You know, everyone talking about everything. So there's a lot of hype, definitely.
No, but did you play the multiplayer? Because the campaign, I assume, is going to be good. I saw a review. It was like 95% saying it was a great campaign. Like, I have no doubt the campaign is going to be good. Did you play the multiplayer?
Not the full release, just the beta, which is, I think, where you shared your strong opinions and got that rough criticism.
Well, can I backpedal a little bit, just a little bit? I did get a chance to play a little bit more here, over the last weekend, and I will say, if they make some changes, it's got a shot. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah. My main difficulty with the game or criticism is that there's just no BR, and I don't know how you come out with a new FPS that doesn't have a battle royale.
Isn't that refreshing?
No, because
there's BR fatigue.
I don't have it. Fatigue for the losers, maybe. When you get that win, you just want more. You know.
No. I don't think it has anything to do with winning and losing. There's just too many battle royales. Yeah. You're the only one that doesn't have battle royale fatigue, I feel like.
Yeah, maybe so. So I don't know. I'm gonna keep chasing that high.
Halo Battle Royale. If you're listening, Microsoft, this is what the Honorable Judge Jimmy wants. Also, I will mention before we introduce our guest, who is amazing this week. Jimmy, who's been an integral part of the success of this business of esports, of everything we're doing here. A lot of you guys don't know he is my right hand behind the scenes. We've been struggling to find him a nickname for the show. And so I want feedback. I want everyone who's listening to this. If you love the Honorable Judge Jimmy, if you love Jimmy the Judge Baratta, if you think this fits, because for those of you who don't know, Jimmy used to be a lawyer. If you love this, let me know, because I kind of love it, and I think we're gonna go with this. But I want everybody's feedback, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a long time coming and trying to figure out where we fit.
Better than Thick Boy.
I was just gonna say I definitely love all of my thick boy fans and people that supported that movement. It was all for naught, unfortunately. So hopefully this is one that sticks. And as I say that, my fiance is over here cracking up at her desk and just shaking her head. No, that can't be your name.
Can't be your name. Look, we have an amazing guest. I don't want to take any more time. We've got such an amazing guest this week. I feel like just every week it gets better and better and better, and I love to see it. This week we have none other than Matt Jackson, who is the founder and CEO of the Ultimate Gaming Championship. Matt, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I feel honored to be here with the honorable judge himself. So, it's great. We'll talk about your comments on Halo later. I am also an OG Halo fan, so
Matt, look, I'm going to prompt you in a second here to give your background in the whole bit. But first of all, I have to add to the introduction. Matt is a bona fide badass. That was actually part of the intro, which I left out. But I want to hear, because before you jump into things, I want to hear your thoughts on Halo multiplayer as an esport. Do you think it's got legs? Do you think this will be a big breakthrough for Halo in the sort of current day?
I solo queue, so I don't ever run with a team. But I can see certain elements of it that remind me a lot of the older Halos, to where that voice that team communication could be a massive factor. So I think the team head-to-head has some legs. I do think there are certain elements of the game that need to maybe be a little tweaked, or maybe I'm just old. I don't know. But like whenever I'm playing and like I get beat down from like 10 feet away, I'm like, how did that even happen? So there's certain pieces that maybe to me don't feel right. But I will tell you that, looking at the new generation of players, it does seem a lot quicker, and that's something I think that's needed for these games for Halo to survive. It can't be, maybe slow of movement as what they were in the past. And then with the sprint and the slide and the grappling, I think those are elements that the newer players will like. So one thing that is notorious in the Halo community is the OG Halo 1 guys hate Halo 2. The Halo 2 guys hate Halo 3. The Halo 3 guys hate everything else. And so I'm trying to like turn over a new leaf and be like, see how this game is going to progress with the next generation. So I do think it has legs. A big piece, we'll see how, the competitive rolls out. There's some big teams listed in the HCS. And, that is not the first time that has happened. And just so making sure those teams continue to play in the HCS will be very important for the fandom. But it's getting great viewership. And, the honorable Judge Jimmy, he may not get his Battle Royale, but you did get a BR. Just not the right kind of BR.
I was gonna say, as a original, I wasn't an original Halo guy, even though I did play the original, but I wasn't like really into it. As an original Quake guy, Halo feels way too slow for me. Let's just the current one, just way too slow.
When you play Quake, you feel like you're off the rails running. But yeah, for sure.
Now, Matt, I'm super excited to have you on. For our viewers who maybe don't know about UGC, would love if you could give them a bit of your backstory, your background, how you got into gaming, why you got into gaming, and what you're focused on at UGC.
Sure. Yeah. I always say it feels like I talk forever whenever I have to go through the outline of UGC, because it seems like literally different seasons of my life, almost different versions of my life. But I'm 35 years old. And I started UGC when I was 19. And at the time, it was mostly fueled by I love sports and I love video games. And so I was hosting Halo 1 LANs in my parents' basement. And I started noticing this competitive nature and this entertainment value to me and my friends playing. Like you'd get a game that was 49-49, and you started feeling that same adrenaline pump as you'd feel whenever you were watching like the Bulls play the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals or something, like whenever I was a huge Michael Jordan fan. And so it really had a true parallel to sports and the love of video games. And at the time it was called competitive video gaming. I mean, they didn't have an esports name yet. And so I was 19 and my cousin actually owned a restaurant in a small town in Southern Illinois. And there was a 25-foot by 25-foot area that was available upstairs. So I opened a LAN center called the Game Attic. and I scrapped together as many tube TVs as I could and old Xboxes. And the idea was it was going to be a place for my friends and I to play because my parents were sick of the fighting and the screaming in the basement. So did that and wired it up. I mean, we literally went in there and for a very, very cheap budget, we pieced together carpet. We ran our own electrical, made sure there was enough power to power what we needed. We started hosting LANs, and then I started promoting it on MySpace. So I'd go on MySpace and just spam messages like it would, and that was early MySpace. You had to like refresh to see if you got a message back even. And so ended up, I remember one day I was up there and I was hosting like a $200 Halo tournament. And there was a team from Clarksville, Tennessee, a team from Chicago, a team from Columbus, Ohio. And give it that we're in a small town in Southern Illinois, I was like, there's something here. I have to keep like pursuing this. And that's really, I think, for me when I saw the potential. And so going from the game addict, knowing I didn't want to be trapped in the addict space forever, looking at a rebrand and needing something that could be more of a traveling circuit, rebranding its Ultimate Gaming Championship. At the time, I never really thought about the technology piece of it, the content piece of it. Twitch didn't exist. People were maybe recording some gameplay and putting it on YouTube, but very focused on the live event space. I ran cross country and track in college, and then pursued my master's in architecture. And during that time, I also kept hosting some tournaments here and there. So while starting in 2004, 2005 time range, there was a good 7 years or so that was kind of like architecture had my life and school had my life. But during the summer or during a weekend, I would host a tournament. My grandparents thought I was nuts. They're like, you're getting a master's in architecture. Why don't you want to work in an architecture firm and focus on that? Why are you messing with the video game stuff? And years later, bringing me articles that are in the New York Times saying, hey, this esports thing was the real deal. You were right. And so doing that, I received my master's in architecture, and I started teaching architecture and coaching cross country and track at the same college I went to. And the computer club asked me to help host a LAN party. And I got to be honest, that was kind of the second rebirth to me being motivated to want to try to pursue this at a larger scale. Pursuing sponsors, I actually received an inquiry from a company in London that was interested in investing into the esports space. Investing meaning I could buy a few more broadcasting things, not a massive investment. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. But the crazy part was my business partner at the time moved from London to my small Southern Illinois town for 2 years to work with me. And it was interesting. We had this warehouse, cinder block warehouse, and we just got in there and made this studio space. We amped up our broadcasting piece of things, and all for no pay. I mean, I would teach architecture and coach all day till 5 or 6, then go to the warehouse and we would run broadcasts and streams. You guys might be familiar with Scott Lucier or Gandhi and Clint Evans or Maven for Call of Duty World League casters. Both those dudes moved to the same town I was in, and we produced content. And that's whenever things starting to kick off with we were broadcasting almost every night COD World League matches for MLG at the time, partnering with them. And, this whole time I'm doing this, still for no pay. I'm getting to be almost 30. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? I'm going to have to find an investor. Unfortunately, my business partner at the time, he lost interest. What we were doing is we would press T-shirts for local teams and whatnot with some screen printing equipment to pay the internet and power bill for the warehouse. And it got to the point where he was like, dude, we're making so much money with the merchandise to pay for this. He's like, I almost want to do that, which rightfully so. I understood it's a long game. And, it wasn't for him. So I began pursuing a proper seed round investor, which would maybe allow us to scale a team that would actually have salaries, health insurance, and be more structured. I remember like probably the lowest part of my journey was we used to host a lot of tournaments at Comic-Cons, and we did a Dallas Comic-Con, and we just did it for the money we could scrap for like paying to enter and play LANs or tournaments. We would do T-shirts and sell those. And we made a pretty good day and went to Applebee's to celebrate. And we're come out and my truck has been broken into, and all of our camera gear and our money is gone.
Oh no.
And I remember coming back
Terrible.
and I was like, it's actually emotional. I talked to some colleges in the area about this entrepreneurial journey, and it's really emotional for me to think about, because that was the closest I've been to like quitting on something, and it took about a couple of days, and then I look in the mirror and say, all right, dude, it doesn't matter. Let's keep going. And luckily in 2016 received seed round funding from an investor in the St. Louis area. We have an office in the St. Louis area now as well, with a sound studio. And we have now 8 full-time employees that are working for us. One thing that's been interesting is kind of progressing from the live event mindset to these several business verticals within UGC. And so 2015 was the first kind of developer partnered event we had hosted with Microsoft. It was Halo 2 anniversary from the Master Chief Collection. It was in St. Louis. And I think it was the largest Halo tournament that they had since Microsoft acquired the franchise from Bungie. We know back in the day with MLG, they would sell out 250 team passes in a matter of an hour. Doing that and then progressing forward as we got investment and looking at the economics of esports, I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, how are people making money? And this is really not everybody's trying to figure it out. I even look at MLG, who I would argue had one of the best products in the esports space. But, you look at their raise and then look what they were sold for. And it's like, what is the economics here? And it's not no discredit to a product or a person running it. It's just how does esports make a sustainable business? And whenever we began looking at it, we knew that we had to pursue the technology area, and we had to pursue content. Those content's king, data's gold, and we figured that would be the area it's going. And it's kind of nice to see recently, even the stuff with the metaverse, how these kind of visions are all aligning for several companies that are building one big ecosystem of gamers, whether it be content or competition. We scaled to an online tournament platform, which we filed a patent for, to use optical character recognition and machine learning for match validation and stat tracking. What that means is our system can scrub your stream or a post-game screenshot and extract those data points that we need. We were able to file it as a use patent in esports. It's not something that's a rare technology. Obviously, you take a picture of your check, it goes in your bank account. It's the similar the process, just for a different industry and a different method of receiving that data point. But there's that piece. There's also our content creation piece. We're in the top 0.001% of Twitch broadcasters. And I would argue probably one of the few in our kind of category. We're not a content creator. We're a tournament infrastructure and tournament organizer company. And then we do have our merchandising component. We're still doing, just not pressing Little League T-shirts anymore. We're making actual proper gaming jerseys and gaming merch. But right now we have a heavy focus on the scholastic space. Looking at the industry and how we could aggregate users properly. It was tough. It's tough to figure out how to get online participants, especially if you start with none. So you want to have a paid to enter online tournament platform, and nobody's going to pay when there's nobody on there playing. And so we've kind of opened the floodgates and said it's all free. And even at that, with an amateur level, it was a slow grow. And so about a year and a half ago, we were pursued by LG Electronics and SHI International. And they said, hey, we want to focus on a B2B strategy to sell product to schools. And that's the first time my head went, ding, ding, ding. This makes sense to me. Getting a monitor sponsor at a B2C level and trying to sell 100 monitors from a live tournament is very difficult, especially to track how that's generated. Somebody might see your LG Ultra Gear monitor at an event, wait a month later, and then go to Best Buy and buy it. How do I prove that ROI for them?
Yep.
But the B2B side, very ingrained. I'm on meetings with our partners, talking about the value of esports, and I've learned so much. I tell people it feels like my world's kind of collided, and I always wondered why I was a teacher for 7 years and why I coached and all that, and it felt like almost just a holding time for me for a while. But I was very passionate as a teacher, and I love emerging industries, 3D printing, 3D scanning, manufacturing. That's my wheelhouse. And I think probably the biggest thing that gets me excited about esports is it's an emerging industry. Like, people need to look at this not like it's just video games, but you are now creating new jobs, and not just create new jobs, truly new jobs that did not exist before. A broadcaster in esports, that's not something 20 years ago that was getting put out to hire, And so for me, it's awesome to watch the growth of that and getting to work in the scholastic space with our partners. There are other teachers. They have students that are interested in this, and they believe in it now. And that's kind of the interesting piece to me, is seeing so many people adopt it. But it's honestly a lot of people like the Honorable Judge Jimmy, where they're like OG Halo guys loving it, and now they're teaching, and now so it's like we're seeing that generational change. And so our approach has been basically to give our tools to state partners. I know there's several other in the scholastic space that are kind of wanting to manage the entirety of the ecosystem. The way we're looking at this is UGC is creating a esports infrastructure where scholastic is a part of that ecosystem. And what that means is Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, New Jersey, Missouri, these are some of our statewide partners. In September, we onboarded over 9,000 new players, and they were high school students. And what's interesting is they are also branching out of their state and going to look at UGC's amateur tournaments. And that's really kind of our secret sauce, is we're going to offer this spread across amateur, pro, scholastic, and these students may be playing in their state high school league, but they also have access to the ecosystem for amateur players and whatever else it may be, which then we will have a subscription model, a paid to enter model for certain things. But all of our scholastic partners get access to this for free. And I've kind of taken a approach similar to Autodesk. If you guys aren't familiar, Autodesk is a company that makes 3D modeling software. They make AutoCAD, and obviously being architecture, I was very ingrained in their software, but they cross several others, including game design and whatnot as well. You get all the Autodesk software for free as a student. But then when you graduate and you run out, your student license runs out, then you got to buy it. And so for us, we're taking a similar model there because we get to connect with these students. They love being on our stream. Our broadcast is awesome. Shout out to Tony Burke. He's our Chief Creative Officer and Production Director. He has done a great job growing our broadcast. And in parallel with the scholastic space, we also have done stuff like the RLCSX B stream. And so we'll run the B stream for the RLCSX. We'll have FaZe Clan versus 100 Thieves or whoever it might be as a pro team. And then an hour later, we're broadcasting high school matches. And these high school matches are getting viewership unseen in the scholastic space because we're aggregating that community. So I might have missed something along the way, but I don't want to keep talking about the whole journey. But it is something that has been a roller coaster, and I love it. And I love the podcast you guys do. I think that, there needs to be more people diving into this, especially as the economics of esports, I think, still need to be figured out. That's my biggest thing I tell partners is I have to make sure esports is successful for you in some way, shape, or form. Whether if it's not straight cash ROI, it's the marketing value, whatever it is, they have to see esports in the proper light or it dies. And I've met lots of people that don't want anything to do with esports because they've done one activation where some company has taken their logo, thrown it in the bottom corner, not cared. Afterwards, saw no sales, and then they're out. And that's where my passion is for esports. Is I want this to be seen as a successful industry. So,
well, Matt, I want to start with that actually because you said something really insightful there, which we've seen with our own business, which is first of all, we only deal with partner sponsors where we believe in the product, right? Like we won't push anything where we don't believe in the product. But then, like as you mentioned with LG, I could tell people I use only LG monitors. I love LG monitors. Go out and buy an LG monitor, right? And they could listen to that podcast and maybe not buy it on the spot, but 6 months later, when they're in the market for a monitor, they remember, the prophet told me to buy LG, so I'm going to go buy LG. And you're right. There's this disconnect necessarily because you can't track that ROI very accurately, right? I'm curious if you could give some insight into what your relationship with LG looks like how you guys are activating for them, how you're driving value to them. Like, could you explain that? Because you said sort of B2C doesn't work from a monetization perspective, but this B2B model does. Could you describe for our viewers how the relationship with LG plays out with you guys?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think there would be a place somewhere along the line for a B2C to work. I don't want to completely negate it. I just find it a lot harder to track, and it's harder to show ROI. With LG, we are working with their B2B side exclusively, and so that relationship is basically I'm an LG sales rep too. So we have a meeting with the school. I'm letting them know about the products LG offers. I mean, we did an event at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and we were being toured around the campus by one of their representatives. And I noticed all their outdoor signage was just static, standard poster signage. And so I'm with the LG people, which I would actually deem as friends now. We have a really great relationship, kind of doing this together. And I'm like, you guys need a high-bright, an LG high-bright out here, outdoor high-bright. You could have the animated, you could have the train coming in and out, you could have times listed, you could update your scheduling. And so you said something I love, which you work with brands that you really get excited about, and LG being one of them that I've always kind of, growing up, my dad was always like, you need to get an LG TV. They're the best TV, Sorry if there's any Samsung lovers out here, but so for me, I am passionate about it. I want to see them successful. And I think that maybe is another piece of this that's kind of like maybe a little more fluffy, but you have to care if your partners are successful. And like I've had activations go where I didn't feel like they were getting what they needed out of it. And I'm open with that. Like, hey, are you guys okay? Like, can we offset this with, can we do another activation after this? Like, and we'll just do it with you. And UGC is notorious for doing stuff the first time on the cheap. Literally will say, this is exactly what it's going to cost us with the prize money and whatever else. If you guys can cover that, we'll do it for that this first time, and show success that way. I think that's another piece of this, is where people try to get the, esports is worth $2 billion. So you need to sponsor us for $150K for a tournament, instead of saying, why don't we step into this? And then that mitigates our chance of failure to our partners. So again, with the LG, it's basically just boots on the ground, and hand in hand, I'm on calls with schools, and the goal is to have these colleges, when they furnish their esports arena, they're buying the LG products, the LED walls, the Ultra Gear monitors. And we have had some success. There are some schools actually in Florida and elsewhere that are purchasing some pretty large and significant accounts with LG through the esports arm of their initiative. But it's been cool. LG, I actually filled out a form on LG's website. That's how I got in contact with them. And Aaron Addison,
wow.
one of the reps, called me and he's like, yo, what you said about Scholastic is exactly what I was thinking. Let's do this. And it's evolved from there. And you know what? Whenever we do an event, they're helping us unload the truck and set stuff up, and we're helping them set up stuff. So it is a true partnership, not just hey, we'll give you some money and you just help us sell stuff.
Matt, one other thing I wanted to touch on, that was really interesting insight sort of into the relationship with you and LG, and I think there's probably a lot of learning there. But fundamentally, UGC, correct me if I'm wrong, you would describe it as a tournament provider, tournament platform, right? This is your primary business.
Yep.
One of the things I've talked about on this podcast a lot is increasingly we're seeing sort of more and more tournament platforms pop up, right? Like the space, I would argue, definitely getting competitive. As a name that has been around longer than most, as a name that has put on bigger events than most, I'm curious, what is in your mind sort of the differentiating factor with UGC? Like, what is the thing that puts you sort of a step above the rest, or how would you define that advantage?
Yeah, there's a couple. The first one, I think, is we've been around for so long, and I've went from everything from designing a bracket on a napkin, or maybe a paper towel if it needed to be bigger, something, and just shouting out the teams in a space to get them to play, and then looking at the function and process that is needed to have that infrastructure and that tournament executed. And so we didn't look at any other tournament platforms, like filing that patent. We've got some team management stuff that I think is really unique. Our platform will inject data points out of it to our broadcast real time. So you're not updating a PSD, you're not updating some sheet. It's flowing straight from the platform in the proper, I think XML. I don't know, our CTO would be able to answer that better. But there is a data stream there that our lower ticker is telling you stats and whatnot. And what we're finding is some of our high school partners have made 24 different seasonal leagues in 2 hours. And they said on any other technology, it would have taken them over 12 hours. So we've somehow, through our tech and our knowledge base and the years we've been in operation, we put functions and processes in place that I think are more than what people are deeming as just a tournament platform. Everybody's like, oh, I got a tournament platform. I got a tournament platform. We do online tournaments. And you find out they're doing it with a Google Sheet. They're doing it with Discord. You actually have a WordPress site where you put your email in and you apparently sign up, and then you have to join a Discord, and then you have to look at a Google Sheet. We're not doing that. And it's been some growing pains. Our Scholastic partners have given us great feedback. If you want to talk about the best kind of super users, they have been it. And our platform is evolving very quickly. I think that's the first piece of this that sets us apart. And you're right, Paul. It's really hard to defend that when somebody's like, oh, we use this tournament platform and there's this other tournament platform, Matt. Like, I guess I need to find another word for tournament platform. I don't know. But we are. That's what we are. I would argue some people don't have a tournament platform. They're still doing it with a paper towel. Yeah, they're just doing it a digital paper towel. The second thing that's interesting to me, and I haven't met all the people in the space, but so many people will just say, Matt, you're a real person. And, I can talk to you and you'll take time to do a meeting with me. And it's because I think at the end of the day, we want to be good partners. And we're not saying that for any other reason than we want the esports industry to be successful. And so we'll go above and beyond to try to make that right for our partners. And I always say, I don't know what that means. Like, are people bad people? Like, are other people bad people? Or like, can you not talk to other people? Like, I don't get it, but that seems to be a lot of the feedback is, Matt, your guys are just like good people that are always caring about if we're well kept. And so maybe that's another component of this. It's just being a good partner. And like I said, I don't know what other companies, their corporate structure and staffing and team are like, but that is a lot of our feedback is just being a good partner as well. So that's what I would give credit to, is just trying to innovate and look at the esports industry and our experiences and how our tech and our software can streamline that, and also just be a good partner.
I wanted to build off of that because being a different, or speaking towards what makes you different, not just in what you've done, but I'm also curious as far as the tournament space that you're in and what's going to set you apart as you continue to do business, right? Not just what you've done that's made you successful, but 6 months from now, where do you see that industry? Obviously things change with COVID, which is kind of a throwaway term, but it's true. But at the same time, especially with brick and mortar, right, competitive facilities that shifted to an online model, I'm curious, you guys had some awesome announcements with your partnerships with schools, with Esports Ohio. I'm curious, without speaking towards anything prematurely, but what can we expect to see as far as trends in that space over the next 6 months or a year?
Yeah, we are definitely going to keep rolling in the Scholastic space. And even if we don't want to, I think at this point we're going to have to, because you know how educators are. The word of mouth and what can snowball from that is pretty impactful. And if something is good, an educator will tell another educator that it's good. And if something is bad, another educator will tell another educator how terrible it is. So we definitely will keep pursuing our state partners. We currently have 12 different agreements out there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7 of the states are currently operational. So we've got another 5 coming on board next semester. Our goal is to break 100K registered players for next year is kind of one of our targets. And we're on track for that right now. We will be looking at how to step into the amateur space. We are also fundraising. I know both of you guys know that. And so the idea is to scale our team and then really have a Scholastic division and an amateur pro division. Next year, we're looking at 8 different titles that we'll be launching amateur-based open tournaments for. And that will be all online. And again, not to play into the cheesy metaverse type mindset, but I really see UGC's tech, its software, trying to become the esports metaverse if you will, because you have Illinois is operating on our platform, as well as Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Missouri, New Jersey. They're all operating their own organizations, but that ecosystem is still a global ecosystem that these students are in. We do have parameters and certain check boxes that the educators can feel comfortable with their students experiencing. But at the end of the day, when they graduate, and some while they're still in high school, they get the opportunity to interact with maybe some pro teams. We're looking at how we could partner with pro teams. We have several discussions going on right now with a couple pro organizations that want to use our technology to facilitate kind of online tournaments for themselves. And that's one area I find kind of intriguing, is the pro team space. You look at pro teams and you look at how their influencers or streamers may get these incredible numbers. Those streamers get to keep that money 9 times out of 10 when they're broadcasting, but they play under a certain banner. So how can we create a revenue stream for a professional organization? And one of those is, I would argue, is online tournaments and leagues. If you want to be part, irrelevant to FaZe Clan, because that's not one of them what I'm talking about. But if you want to be part of the FaZe Clan, you play in FaZe Clan tournaments. You make top 100. All of a sudden now you get a badge on your profile saying you're FaZe certified or something of that nature. That can then generate revenue similar to Twitch model, where you're subscribing. You could subscribe to a FaZe partner hub on UGC's platform, and in that moment, you now create a new revenue stream for pro teams. So we are looking, to your question, Jimmy, we're going to keep plugging on the scholastic space, but we're going to get back in the amateur and pro space as well. And then we're going to see how we can cross-pollinate both strategies, which is really like the end goal with all of this. So,
Matt, can I just play off this a little bit? Because you mentioned pro teams, and I think I know the answer to this question, but in a perfect world, what do you think is the more interesting sort of segment of the tournament platform market, right? Would you rather be the tournament provider to the masses, like to the long tail, right? Like every school that wants to run a tournament, me and my friends that want to run a tournament? Or would you rather be like, is it more interesting to be the tournament provider for, a bunch of pro teams, the tier 2 teams maybe, right? And throw sort of the biggest events? Like,
yeah.
In a night, like, which one do you think is the more interesting segment of the market from your point of view?
I think where we're positioned, it would be throwing tournaments for the professional organizations. Primarily online, and I would think of something more like a league or a season, something that, because one of the targets we have for our platform is to have active users. A lot of people have a ton of emails, but how many are actually active on your site playing? Well, if you've now got 6 different professional organizations that have tournaments and leagues up on their hub, have players go in there constantly to check stats, leaderboards, standings. Really, our platform does some pretty incredible things with the standings and how teams are highlighted, really some little extra detail points. We will be adding some, I guess I could probably say, streaming features to our platform is probably where I'll stop at that right now. But there's some really innovative streaming features that we're implementing to our platform as well, that could kind of all live in that one ecosystem, because I do see the pro team space as a space that needs support. It's not, the players and the influencers are incredible and they're making good money and they're seeing that, their pockets, growing. But think about like a team at large, the brand at large, and you have all these big influencers under it and you're paying them. How do we get that brand to have revenue streams that create a sustainable infrastructure for them? So I would say that. On the flip side, I love the idea of doing an Ultimate Gaming Championship high school nationals. So taking all of our partners, the top 3 teams in each state, we'll do a national championship with that. I love doing big open tournaments, and typically you have a few pro teams in there as well. So I think in order to talk about this as a business strategy, user acquisition, and building our player base and our ecosystem, the move would be to work with pro organizations to build that ecosystem. And then the idea is UGC creates more of an offering than just playing for that pro organization or just playing within Illinois High School Esports Association. So while they all are doing their unique thing that they're traveling to our site to play in, they also now are greeted with more opportunities to interact with our brand and other activations that they can play. So,
and sorry, one last thing on this, which is, you mentioned it's about having active users and not just a bunch of emails. I think I know our audience would be interested in hearing sort of how you guys approach getting participants organically for these tournaments, right? Like, and without naming names, I've seen all kinds of tournament providers try all kinds of crazy things, like paying sports teams or doing this or doing that, or right, like I've seen all kinds try and reach more people to get more people playing in tournaments, and I would call to not much success. Like, what do you think in your mind is some of the keys to building that base of participants organically?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's kind of where we've landed with the Scholastic space. The honest truth, working in the startup mode, working on our seed round investment and kind of going into our Series A fundraising. Obviously, some resources are limited. And, I also don't want to be a company that raises money and never makes money. I don't see a reason for that to live in the space. I know there's successful people and individuals out there that have done that, and I no discredit to, but I want UGC to be here. I want to not be CEO and just have a board seat and see, like, to 30 years from now, high school kids carrying UGC backpacks and people connecting with the brand continually. I don't want to just fizzle out. And so it's kind of a tangent to your question, but the Scholastic space has been big for us. And it's really what it's done is it's created the league operator in Illinois, the league operator in Indiana, all of our partnered states. Those league operators are now working user acquisition for UGC. And I hate saying user, I want to say player acquisition, but just to be clear, like, registered people within our online ecosystem is the important part, because that creates an opportunity for more interaction. So, they are the ones on the ground getting these high school students to register for our platform. So our user acquisition cost minus our burn rate, we're not really putting any money into like actual user acquisition cost, because our partnerships and that grassroots kind of approach has created this 6,000 students in Ohio are onboarded to our platform because we partnered with Esports Ohio.
Yep.
And I almost don't think there's a better method for that. Similar model to the pro organization, where we would partner with the pro organization. Ideally, there'd be a rev share instead of an upfront payment. And I hope they actually see the value in this, because this is pretty powerful for the organization at large, is to build that snowballing effect of revenue that, sounds terrible, but it wouldn't go to their streamers. It wouldn't go to their pro players. This would go straight to the org at large, which seems to be the biggest issue with some of these pro organizations. So I think the Scholastic space, building the organic user base that way, I always say it like this. For years, I tried to figure out how to build a grassroots community in each state, and it's been very difficult. You got to go on MySpace and send a message to everybody that likes gaming to get that. Now I can go to one person, and they are basically every high school that has a program in the state are finding those interested esports enthusiasts and players that then are in our ecosystem. So I think that's a big key to this.
Do you see any value or interest? And it kind of sounds funny, but I've seen these senior leagues, right, taken to the opposite end of the spectrum, where you have these leagues of, as gamers age up, right, and they still want to play, they still want to compete, and obviously access to the school system to onboard such a massive amount of users, clear value and an opportunity there. But I'm just curious, because you had mentioned cost of acquisition, and I'm curious not just that, but also player behavior and kind of what you're noticing from your younger cohorts versus any interest in also aging yourself up.
Great question. I guess the honorable judge wants to get in the league somewhere, and
The handicap league.
Jimmy, I think he just called you old.
I mean, I am. Old and wise.
Yeah, right. And esports years were like 400. So
this is true.
Yeah, so the senior leagues and military leagues are something that has actually popped up. We've had several organizations approach us about building their own partner hub and hosting tournaments that would be for maybe a veteran and their grandkid. And, it might be, that kind of model all the way to just even active military. And then in terms of senior league per se, which makes me sound like I feel like I need to go talk to the nursing homes or something when I say it like that, the senior leagues. But, the older, like, age divisional leagues, I haven't really thought about it. It's a great idea, actually. And, I don't know, I would love to hear your kind of input on, I mean, I'm 35. I've been playing Halo Infinite. So like, yeah, if I could join a 30 to 40-year-old Halo Infinite league, it might help me not get as trashed on whenever I join a solo queue. So, yeah, I do see there's value there. One thing we're looking at doing is doing competitions for the teachers, because I mentioned earlier, I'm meeting a lot of guys that's my age, has the same story about Halo being really important to them, or one of these games, Unreal, Quake, one of these impactful esports titles we hear about in the history of esports. We thought about, is there a way that the teacher could play in a league and win esports lab gear for their students? So then all of a sudden now you get the camaraderie of the students supporting the teacher. And that's one thing. Last year, UGC gave away over $100,000 worth of scholarships and probably over $100,000 worth of esports lab equipment, all to our winners. And so seeing how that model would work. To your question about the player behavior, that's another thing that gets me so juiced up about the scholastic space is, I mean, you think back 15 years ago, some of the words coming out of people's mouths when they would play video games and like what they would say to each other and like kind of that social emotional awareness that you'd have. And, I've seen this firsthand, and like, I would even go as far to say, I can't remember what 19-year-old Matt would say whenever I got killed by my cousin in Halo, but it's like, it's over time, people change and you start being more aware of what you're saying. And now we're seeing in the high school space, these students having a little bit more sportsmanship, understanding. And it's also because it's being seen more like a sport. Even in our online technology, we have social emotional kind of cues to where after a high school team plays another high school team, one team will do a report. Was the team on time? Were they polite? Did they say anything? Did they try to cheat? Whatever. And that report goes to the coach of the other program. So then they come back and say, hey, we did a great job. We were good sports. We may have lost, but you know what? You got a good, it's trying to build that kind of model is really important to us. So I think that I have seen an increase that gives me a little hope for the players, the younger players, kind of being a little bit more aware of what may or may not be appropriate, not discriminating against people. We did a $300,000 Gears of War tournament at Caesars Entertainment Studio in Las Vegas, and it was obviously a live event. And have to go over to the open bracket station and finally have to call Matt, and I'm gonna come over here and stand like a dad or something. And these kids are like saying something about the other person's mama, and like this is not appropriate. And then there's like a racial thing, and I'm like, all right, we're done here. Like you're gonna have to put some parameters in place. And I think that's also a byproduct of being so easy when you're behind the microphone and you're online. It kind of transfers over to that competition element as well in a live setting. So I do think overall the future industry looks very exciting, and it's going to be seen more professionally. That's kind of why some of the stigma of esports probably has taken so long to grow, is because back in the day, there was no real rules. There was no school hosting it. It would be like if you just had park basketball and there was never anything else. And and I think that's what we see where we started, and then where we're going is to be more structured, which is going to help the overall perception of everything. So,
Matt, one last question for you here on my end, and that is, let's fast forward 5 years. What do you think is the winning business model / monetization scheme for tournament platforms, right? Like, how are the big tournament platforms like UGC making money 5 years from now?
Yeah. One thing that I've been looking at is just kind of any kind of subscription model. So you look at Spotify or Twitch, if you will, and you've got all these free opportunities, and it's typically between 15 and 20% of the registered user base is also a subscriber. And so how can we build a subscription model around UGC that gives discounts to tournament entries, gives them the opportunity to potentially get refunds? That's something that's not typical in the space when you buy a ticket for something, and all other kinds of incentives. Like I said, there's some really innovative streaming elements that we're looking at, as well as like our management platform. So for me, number one would be to integrate a subscription model, and then we'll have the player base that's being primarily pumped to us from our high school market. That would allow for a recurring revenue source, which I think is massive. I think it's something that's hard to find in esports, and that month-on-month recurring revenue is where we're targeting. And, hopefully by the end of next year, we can look like we're on track to have anywhere from 60 to 100K per month. That would be paid in subscriptions and microtransactions. And it's kind of like almost the Fortnite model. I think Fortnite dropped free game and they make $3 billion the first year. It's like, how can we mimic that with esports? But I think that's also tapping onto pro organizations, showing them the opportunity here, and I don't know. I'm kind of on this this Wu-Tang Clan kick. I don't know if anybody's watched the Wu-Tang Clan Hulu series or not, but I'm
Heard great things.
Really inspired because it's like a startup. And there's one point where RZA talks to his people and he's like, I need a 5-year plan. And I think everybody's coming in esports because it's a $2 billion industry or whatever and thinking they're going to get rich quick. And really, that's UGC's model. We're the long game. And so integrating subscription models, maybe getting some contracts with developers and pro organizations for broadcasting. Our broadcasts are typically one of the highlights of UGC that people comment on and really enjoy. But I think at first glance, getting the platform to monetize through subscription and incentivizing through maybe gamification, maybe some unique like subscriber only activations, and doing that piece is really where we're targeting.
Jimmy, I don't know if you had anything else here, but I wanted to get to our new segment here before we wrap up.
That's what I was waiting on.
Okay, good.
I'm nervous for this, honestly.
All right, guys. So this is going to be new to everyone listening, even if you've listened to all 170 episodes of this podcast. We're trying something new this week. I'm super excited about it. Basically, every week, what we're going to do, assuming our listeners, you guys like it, and we want your feedback on this, every single week, we're going to take our guests through a handful of questions that are not esports related. We want to give you guys insight into sort of the people behind the guest, behind the C-suite title. And we're calling this, call it working title here, Judge Jimmy cross-examination. Okay. And so it's going to be a little bit rapid fire here. Okay. Jimmy, I hand it over to you.
Don't be nervous, Matt. These are harmless questions.
I really think you should play this up, though, since you have a line of agreement. All right, do you?
Well, in that case, silence. Let me get through these. So I'm going to ask just a handful of questions so we can get to know you a little bit better as a person, as Paul said. First one, hopefully an easy answer. What's your favorite video game?
Gotta be Halo.
Gotta be Halo. Good answer. You played on original Xbox and you played played all of them ever since?
Correct.
Yes,
Except now I'm playing on PC,
Good
but
man.
I'm still plugging an Xbox controller into it. So.
Oh, clever. Nice. Next question. If you could go back to college, what class would you take or what major would you pursue, knowing what you know now?
I really think I got a lot of skill set from my architecture background, honestly, like with cost estimating, presenting, Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever it may be. But I guess I would have to say computer science because you seem to be able to write your own check whenever you walk through the door. So
I do appreciate that you saying you kind of, with that initial answer that you like how you did it already, which is great to hear. All right, a little bit more fun now. What is your favorite show to stream or to watch, and what platform do you watch it on? This could be currently, not of all time. What you're.
Right now, it's a Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang Who? No, it's a good answer.
Right now, I mean, the truth is, I'm kind of hit or miss with series. Some days I don't watch TV at all. So I guess I'll go with the Wu-Tang right now. It's been a really great series.
I love Hulu too, and the funny thing is with so many great shows and so many streaming providers, there's no pressure to finish anything. You can stop in the middle of an episode and be like, "This is trash," right? And we live in a wonderful age of content. Holodeck content above all else, I would say. What is your favorite book, or what book really shaped you today?
The Hobbit.
The Hobbit, nice.
I mean, there's definitely several other books, like far as. I hate calling them self-help books, but personal development books that have been great for me, like Bold is a book by Peter DeMontis, and it's about how to make impactful wealth and impactful change. And, it talks about the innovators that coming out of like the garages and basements, and then the high level investors, and how this world is aligning to where, maybe the business people and the investment people do need the little, they call them furry creatures that are making the Facebooks of the world. So that book has also been very impactful to me, but I love Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So I guess I'll go with that.
And last question, and I think I know the answer based off your TV. What type of music do you listen to?
I do like hip hop, but it does range pretty much everything, to be honest with you. Country might be the hardest one for me, because I'd prefer probably older country based on what my parents had me listen to, some George Jones or something. But yeah, I would say I typically listen to hip hop. So.
A man of many tastes and many skills and capabilities. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Guys, I love it. That was the first installment of Judge Jimmy's cross-examination. If you loved it, let us know. We'd love your feedback. We're going to try and do this every single week with every guest, because I also think it's interesting to sort of see what all the guests are interested in outside of their gaming life, and hopefully give some insight. So, Matt, if you want to be followed, found, if UGC, like where can people follow or find what you guys are doing?
Sure. Probably the best resource is our corporate site, ugc.gg. It outlines our 4 business verticals, what we've done, and what we are doing. Our online tournament platform or technology is ugcesports.gg. You can follow us on Twitter at UGC Events, as well as Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, all the same handle. So there's that. If you want to follow me, it's at UGC Matt on Twitter. And I'm not that interesting, though. I just retweet the UGC stuff. So
Matt, I love it. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure having you on and learning about the business. Guys, just a couple of small reminders, little housekeeping things. Every Wednesday evening, we do a live stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We broadcast it everywhere, basically, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, everywhere you find our content, you can tune into the live stream. It's a lot of fun. We do all the news, cover all the news and analysis that doesn't get into the podcast these days. We also put the live stream up as a VOD after the fact. So even if you miss it on Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, you can still tune in and check out the discussion. It's a lot of fun. It's a bigger cast. And the beauty of being there live is you get to actually ask us questions, get in our faces, challenge us. We really enjoy it if you show up live. Other thing is, this week, when you're listening to this, the 2 new podcasts we launch are all live now everywhere. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, like literally everywhere, you Stitcher, you name it, everywhere you get your podcasts, you can tune in to Meta Business and Meta Woman. Meta Business is all the business talk you want from sort of metaverse news. So it's not just gaming. It's all the metaverse news and a lot of discussion and analysis around the business side of that, obviously. And then Meta Woman, hosted by our very own Lindsay Poss, is an incredible show, podcast. She's got incredible female executives who operate in metaverse companies on the show every single week. And so I highly recommend tuning into both of those, Meta Business and Meta Woman. You can subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, just about everywhere you get your podcasts. So really would love everyone to check those out and give us your feedback. Make sure to follow Business of Esports everywhere, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. And we hope you continue to love the content that we bring you every week. Matt, thank you so much for being here. The Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta, thank you for being here. And as always, we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.